your time. Score your team at joedalton.ie.
Life will always bring you on a rollercoaster ride. I'm navigating through each and every day and loving what is and what the future may hold. My past has given me amazing memories and untold stories, and at times feeling of worry and hardship, which I now see as part of my life journey. Remember, show up, and if you fail, that's okay. Tomorrow will bring a new day and new ideas. I've had the privilege to spend time and interview some amazing leaders over the years. As they share their stories of life and business, I find out what makes them the people they are. I'm honoured to share their stories with you. Brian Kennedy, welcome. How are you?
Hey Joe, great to see you again. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yes, Brian, you are now an author. Congratulations with the book Bulletproof Banker. You've learned a lot through the years before we get going, what is leadership to you?
Wow, good question. Leadership to me, and you come across so many different types of leadership, Joe. So people who can lead from the front and take responsibility and communicate clearly, have values and live to those values. Okay, and aren't afraid to make decisions, but are clear about the reasons why decisions are being made, and bring people along with them, so that people can, how would I put it? Reach their potential and enjoy work, enjoy going into work. Which is great if you're working for a really good leader. So all of that.
All of that. On a previous show, we were talking about leadership with one of my guests, and we discussed that, there's been so many books written over the decades with leadership, and there will continue to be books written on leadership.
Mm.
And is it something that we get right, we get wrong? Do we improve as leaders as we get older? This is where I want to drive the conversation today. Where are we going wrong with leadership? Where are we going right with leadership?
Mm.
There's this new thing as well, which is, toxic masculinity, but there's also masculinity. And I think people are sort of mixing this up as well, between thinking that it's all one, but it's not. Explain it to me. Oh, wise one.
Grasshopper, tell me more. Oh, jeez, Joe. I mean, look, I have, over a 40-year career, worked for many, many different types of managers, both male and female. And I've worked for some of the biggest companies, the biggest building society, the biggest car rental industry company, some of the biggest banks in this state. And I've come across a huge range of leadership and been a leader myself. Okay. And having been on many, 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 many leadership courses where you're supposedly taught how to be a leadership guru and to lead your team. They'll tell you about communication. They'll tell you about listening. They'll point you in those directions. They'll tell you how to have a difficult conversation with somebody. They'll probably learn how to do statistics. Okay, so you can look at the numbers. But the smallest part, if it's ever mentioned in any of those courses that I remember, is emotional intelligence. And where leaders should learn about compassion. And I don't mean, oh, Mary, oh, Johnny, I'm very sorry that that's happened to you. And, I mean understanding what's going on in the lives of the people that you lead and giving them a break when they need to, because obviously people will respect you more. They'll go through a brick wall for you when you're a good leader like that. and they will do more for you. But leadership has changed, in my view, to the numbers, process, the standardization of what they're asking everybody to do, so that the opportunities to get on for people and to understand actually what the role is that they do is disappearing. And along with that, then, is disappearing values in certain industries where it's not about the customer, it's not about service, it's about the company making a profit and giving a return to the shareholders. And to me, the leadership has to encompass all of that. And too often do we see now that when a company starts to struggle or there's a change in the financial figures that they expected, the first thing that gets cut are the people. The first thing, right?
Well, I would agree with you that, because also people are the biggest cost, financial cost to any organization as well. But I just want to jump back to
Yeah,
where you said about compassion.
yeah,
Compassion, when we talk about soft skills, people saying it's about having compassion. But can you have too much compassion? Because, leaders also need to be able to ask the hard questions and make the decisions as well
yeah.
that may affect people. So,
Of, of course, of course, you're right. But the communication has to be truthful. The dialogue has to be honest. The environment that people are going to work in has to be not toxic. And the principles that the whole business is built on have to be ethical. Okay. If they're not, what's the point? How are you then leading your people? How are they supposed to believe that the journey that you're on is the true journey? How are they supposed to have optimism for the future? How are they supposed to believe that tomorrow is going to be better? How can they, as an individual, how can the people that I lead as an individual, take a moment to understand for themselves that they're going to get developed, that they can have confidence when they look at themselves in the mirror with their self-image, and you know their future is bright, that they can have optimistic for the future and not worry that any day they could lose their job, or I don't believe what I'm being told by the leadership team. It doesn't make sense, that there's decisions coming down the road that are going to be a surprise. And at the end of the day, then you realize that you're working for, there's no ethics in the industry or the company that you work for.
okay. You mentioned there, you mentioned there about being truthful. And if you have a middle management team leader who knows what's being said is wrong, but is going to go ahead and do it anyway because he was only doing his job.
Mm.
And there's the financial part of it where I have a wife and a small child and a mortgage and everything. And if I say this wrong, I may lose my job. So I'll just not be truthful. Or, and I'm trying to choose my words here,
Yeah.
slightly misleading to the staff.
Mm.
Like, where do we draw the line on ethics?
Yeah, that's, you've put that really well. And Have I been in that position in the past? If I'm honest, I have to say yes, I was. There was a point in time in my career where everybody in my department was being told they were going to be put at risk of redundancy, but it didn't affect me as their leader. And my leader wanted me to go into the room with him as that message was being delivered, as if it affected me, and we were all in this
Together.
boat together. And I refused. And I said, no, if I'm going to stand at the top of the room, I want to be honest and clear and tell these people it doesn't affect me. I'm here to support them, but I'm not in the same boat. And that's what we did. Okay. But the initial true, not in malice, if you know what I mean, but the initial
Here.
thing was, we're just going to go in and deliver this message that everybody is going to be put at risk of losing their job. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to, but it's not, the final thing is not everybody might lose their job, but everybody is being put at risk. And obviously then maybe they would pick and choose who it would be that would be made redundant, or it could be voluntary and people would decide to go. So I think that happens every day when people are making those decisions. But we can see some of the biggest companies in this country over the last 12 months who realized that they overhired during COVID and with the stroke of a pen decided to make many, many people redundant. And there was absolutely no humanity in the way that was done. And these are the companies that are, you know, put out there as places to work for younger people. And, you know, the industries that I'm talking about. And that's the way they treated the people when they just decided they didn't seem, let's put it this way, Joe, they didn't seem to look at any other cost cutting opportunities. They went straight to the people first. And that's only, if my memory and my recollection is correct with my grey hair, that only started in the Thatcherite and the Ronald Reagan time in the 80s. Companies, when they hit trouble, always looked for other ways to save money before people lost their jobs. They might have put the price up for the goods that they were selling to make more revenue to keep people in jobs, you know, but they didn't straight away turn around and say 10,000 people, 1,000 people gone.
Yeah, I've known of companies who have, in a downturn, had a choice to either let people go, but what they did was they brought everybody into a meeting and they said, look, we've a choice here. Let one or two of yous go, or everyone in the company, we take a pay cut.
Yeah.
And everybody agreed that there would be a 3 or 4% pay cut. And by doing that, kept everybody in employment. And, you know, there's one thing as well when a company's going into a bit of a downturn as well, is sometimes they cut their marketing budget, and they shouldn't. They should actually continue on that.
Yeah.
But I think that was a smart move from that company that kind of went, look, this is what we're doing. And that shows integrity and honesty.
And what you've just said there, integrity and honesty, are the reasons why the people in those companies took a pay cut so everybody could stay in their job, because they were working in an honest, trusting environment. A company that was being led by ethical principles. People who were all pushing in the same direction. Okay? So it made sense that there was a very good environment for those people to work. And because they were a good team and because they maybe all respected one another And because there wasn't some people acting the maggot and, letting Brian do all the work and Joe was sitting in the corner not doing anything, okay, that they didn't have that issue. So then they went, yeah, of course we'll take a pay cut so everybody can, stay in the job until the downturn or a turnaround comes. That's the difference.
Yeah, but and that is good, shows good leadership at the top. But as I said in the beginning, there's been so many books written on leadership, and we can tell the life cycle of ants and how they function and how they manage and how, and we can, we know how bees operate in a hive, but we still haven't figured out leadership. And is that because ego? Is it because that as society grows and develops, it changes? You and me in the 80s, when we were working, we never had any of the issues or concerns that we have today. In the 80s, we were only being really, in the late 80s, we were only really being introduced to email, and now we have AI. So as the landscape changes within the corporate world, managers, does what I'm trying to get at, old style management, good old style management, is that still very effective because of human nature? And are we forgetting that?
Oh, well, cheapers. Old style management, new style management. Listen, I can tell you that if I go back 40 years, I can tell you that I had managers who were very tough, not very ethical, not very honest in their communication. In my book, I tell a story about a time where I was going for promotion and I was being passed over, and even my peers couldn't understand why I was being passed over because I was exceptional at what I did at the time. And when I decided to leave that company, the manager who was making the hiring and the promotional decisions asked to speak to me, and we went and I sat in his beautiful garden. He was dying of cancer at the time, and he turned around and he said to me, Brian, I just want to apologize for not promoting you all those years ago. It suited me to keep you where you were because you were so good at what you did. Okay. So talking about ethical leadership, that didn't do an awful lot for my career or my self-development or my mental health. But it made him a very successful senior manager in an organization because we were delivering. So where was the compassion? Where was the empathy? Where was the emotional intelligence in that? So that type of management still occurred 40 years ago. And I come back to my point earlier. Managers, leaders are still going and doing corporate courses that are teaching them about communication, listening, supposed values, okay, and decision making. And the piece that's missing is the fact about compassion and dealing with people with compassion and the values that you hold as a human and a person in the organization that you work in, how you're going to bring those through. That nothing's changed. The the the, the leadership courses are copy and paste. In my view, a lot of them are copy and paste, and they leave out that really important ingredient, which is the emotional intelligence piece. And that doesn't mean, Joe, that you can't make the hard decisions. That means that you explain them when you make them, and be honest in your communication. And people will respect you for that.
Tools of life, really,
Well, I mean, as a person, look, take it down to the fundamental as a person. What are your values of as a person? And what do you bring into your workplace? I mean, it's not Jekyll and Hyde. You're not a nice person outside of work and then go in and turn into a complete and utter, maniac, psychopath, corporate psychopath when you go into the office to run your team. So that yes, ego can come into it, but I have seen male egos being replaced by even bigger female egos in organizations. Okay, and because of diversity, and I don't know what way I want to articulate that, because I just want the right person to get the right job. But the pressure and the values of the organization today dictate the way in which a lot of leaders lead. And that can be through fear and through, what would we call it, self-preservation.
Well, then, are there people in leadership roles that make decisions emotionally, and instead of looking at the facts? And is that wrong to lead a company forward?
I think people have made decisions because of culture. And we can see some of those in a lot of companies that operate in Ireland. And I'm not just talking in the banking sector, I'm talking about in the retail sector, who picked up sticks and just left this jurisdiction. I don't think that was an emotional decision. I think that was, a financial decision. And it's not that some of these companies were not making a profit. It's because they weren't making enough of a profit. So how much is enough in order for you to give back to the shareholders? And I'm back to this whole thing around the shareholders. Yes, a return for the shareholders, but it's an organization that employs people, that gives people a job, that allows them to live their life, to give them hope for the future. A positive workplace helps people reach their potential. But if you're constantly looking over your shoulder as to whether an organization is either going to make more people redundant or stay in the country, that pressure, that stress,
Okay, well, look at it this way, right? Let's look at it this way. Let's not look at the big multinational. Let's look at the companies that keep Ireland afloat. And they're, the SMEs.
Yeah.
And if you look then at an SME that has, say, 10 to 50 employees, and let's look at the owner. The owner would have created a business because he's seen something in the marketplace. He also wanted to experience the freedom, and also wanted to be able to create a wealth factor for himself, which would be more beneficial than an employee. But along that road, if they're a good company, they're going to bring people into the organization that will help them achieve what they want to. And for a company like that, it's about making profit, but it's about making profit every year and keeping the people that they have employed as part of their team, so they can have a better life as well, pay the mortgage, enjoy time with the family, and have all the trimmings as well.
Yeah,
I think there's some sort of hop, skip, jump from when a company jumps into a multinational.
Yeah.
There's a cord cut where it's more profit and not really about the people. Even though there might be the glamorous thing about the pool tables and we're great.
Yeah.
But I think a smaller company that we don't hear about, that is in the backyards of nowhere, that has 50 employees, probably adds more value to a country than the taxes that is paid by a multinational.
Here's the prime example, and I hope I have the company name right. Remember the fire in Glanbia? Down the country.
No.
Family run, huge company, well known worldwide, yogurt maker, milk, whatever, right? Continued to pay their staff while the factory was being rebuilt. Came out immediately after the fire and told all their employees, we don't want you to be worrying. We're going to look after you. Had discussions with the farmers, so the farmers knew, all this milk that they were delivering wasn't going to be able to be used for X period of time because they had to rebuild the plant. That was the best experience that I watched and read about in a company that showed leadership and proper, true leadership, where the people came first and they wanted them not to be worrying about the future. We will rebuild. We will be back on track. You will still have a job. Okay? You never hear that, Joe, in other companies. And that's why the people in those companies stay working for them for 10, 15 years or whatever. And yes, they might be in it. I don't mean they're in a backwater in the country where, it's the only job in town. It's not that. It's because they would still leave if it was a completely toxic environment. But I have no doubt that the people in that company would probably work long hours, maybe have a heavy workload. The managers, because they have a product that's sold worldwide and whatever, right? But look at how they were able to actually show what a fantastic company that was to work for. So we can have. I mean, I've had the long hours. I've had the heavy workload. I've had job insecurity, as you know. If people read my book, The Bulletproof Banker, that led me to suffer mental exhaustion, working 84 hours a week because I didn't know whether I was coming or going, whether I could believe what I was being told. The processes were being changed. Everything was being standardized. It was box ticking all over the place, right? That was an environment for me that was a mixture of everything that leads to a toxic environment, that led me to hate. Is that the right word? I don't know whether that's the right word to use. Dislike an industry that I earned my living in and worked in for many, many years, because I just didn't like the way it was going ethically. I firmly believe that if I lent somebody money to buy the property of their dreams, to build memories for the future for their family, if I lent them that money for a 25-year period, I fully expected the bank to be there with them through the good and the bad of that 25 years. And sadly, that's no longer the case. That's no longer the case. And we all know what's happened, with loan sales and evictions, and there was always evictions. Don't get me wrong, there was always evictions, and it's a tough part. Loan sales and things like that are a completely different
but there's more people now who are over their 60s who are being evicted from houses or being made homeless because of corporate, and that's a bit shocking, for a country. If you read our proclamation, and I read it the other day, and and it's sort of when I read it, it fills me up with pride. And if you listen to someone saying it, it can bring a tear to your eye,
Yeah.
or proclamation.
Mm.
And what that is saying and what's going on within the vulture funds and people being
Yeah.
taken out of homes is feels apart from reality. So,
So,
look, come on.
So can I just jump in for a sec? So we're talking about leadership and ethical leadership and decision making. Okay, you take a moment to look at any marketing campaign that's out there for most of the big companies. Glitzy, bright colors, drag you in,
Jazz
tell you how
hands.
fantastic they are, brilliant. You can have so much data for free. In the times you can have free banking for life. You can,
Yeah.
the marketing is fantastic. It's brilliant. It's, get this brilliant kind of broadband, whatever it might be, and then you get it into your house and it's crap. Okay. And you want to make a complaint and there's nobody to talk to. Right. That is what's going on in numerous companies today. That is leadership are making those decisions that if you have a problem and you go into the website of some of these companies, you cannot find a phone number to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So ethical decisions, right? Where you've spoken before about leaders being of service, right? That's what companies are. Yes, flog me whatever you want to flog me. And if it's great, I will buy it if I need it. But if I have a problem, can you please come and help me resolve it? Don't leave me in the dark. Be of some kind of service to me to help me,
Yeah, I think what they get is once they get the money, they do a runner. It's like in most companies, if you ring them up and you hit support, say you do have a phone number and you're on for ages with support. But if you hit sales, you get someone right away.
100%, 100%, right? And you're talking to a guy who set up one of the first call centers, and I wouldn't even call it a call center, but it was a call center before call centers ever existed, right? To help, the whole idea of it was to help customers solve their problems. It wasn't any other alternative reason. There was no cost cutting involved. It was, I've got some guys over here that are doing administration on work and sorting out people's accounts. But I need people to talk to the customer to understand what challenges they're having so that we can actually understand, hey, we're getting 50 of these complaints a day. We need to look at this process and sort it. Simple, bog standard, straightforward thinking. Okay. Not rocket science. But you ring every single company today, the first thing that you'll hear is that they are experiencing a huge volume of calls. It's not possible in every single company and every time you ring that's what you get. It's because they look at a call center and a customer services center as a cost. They look at the sales area. They give you've been in sales and you're a brilliant salesperson and you coach people in selling, right? You know that the salespeople make loads of money selling for the company. But the customer services guys can keep the customer. And especially if that customer is profitable. So why do they keep cutting and cutting and cutting the call center numbers and the customer services numbers? It's because they don't value. They've got the sale and they don't value the after service.
Yeah. Okay. However, you may then just have a name called customer service. But when you speak to someone in customer service, they may not be trained enough to have those emotional intelligence and can be extremely rude because I'm sure if we put it out there, how many people have had a bad experience with customer service in, car insurance or
Yeah,
health or,
yeah,
house insurance or whatever it may be. I'm sure there'll be a percentage that said they have been treated rude, shouted at, whatever it may be. Even politicians,
yeah,
I've spoken to someone and they said that they were speaking to a interloper, as they called it, within a TD's office in Wicklow, and that person was shouting at them.
yeah, yeah. So why do people have those experiences? It's quite simple, really. Number one, the person on the telephone hasn't been properly trained, right? The company think that the call center job is a, a low skilled job, when actually it's not a low skilled job, and it should be seen as one of the most important places to work in the company, because it's the face of the company. It shows the values of the company through the person that you're speaking to. So if the company is not a decent environment to work in, if the people aren't being looked after right, if the process has been standardized, where that person on the call is told, you need to get Joe off the phone within 35 seconds because I'm measuring that you have to answer 65 calls a day. And if you don't, I'm going to bring you into the room and we're going to have a very serious conversation, right? Which then leads Brian to worry about, oh, what's my future going to be like? You know, I might lose my job. And then the manager won't give me the empowerment to make the decision to solve Joe's problem. Because Brian says, well, Joe, that's terrible. I'm sorry. And by the way, Brian is hearing this problem that Joe has 50 times a day, right? And he's kind of going, oh, Joe, I need to talk to my manager. No, Brian needs to be given the autonomy and the empowerment to solve that problem and give Joe 50 quid of compensation so that Joe can go off that call a happy customer and stay with the company. Instead, what's happening is they're working long hours, they've got huge workloads, they're not secure in their job, they've managers barking at them, everything is being driven by statistical information about the length of a call, the call abandons, how quickly it's been answered, and not the quality of the call and how you've sorted Joe's problem.
Here's something that we've a booklet out on. It's, customer service. And, one of the rules is you don't need permission to say yes, right?
Yeah.
But you need to ask for permission to say no. And it's also about benefits of empowerment as well.
Yeah. 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 How many times do you see there's a complaint program on RTE at the moment? I haven't seen a full episode of, but I've seen a few snippets.
It's just called RTE.
That's a good one. Yes, you're right. But they have this program where people write into them and say, hey, I got this huge big problem with Brian Kennedy Inc. or whatever it might be, and they won't solve my problem. And they get involved. And you know what happens? By the end of the program is solved. And the only reason that happens is because the person who was dealing with the complaint in the company wasn't empowered to solve it. Or the environment that they're working in is so stressful and toxic that the structures are not in place for the work to be done and the questions to be answered. Or the ethics of the organization are so bad that the answer to the complaint is always, we're not giving you a refund. No. And you have to fight, and they want you to fight.
Do you know what I think is a great exercise for any organization, that any member of staff, so they have, say, a support staff, or they have, a call center, whatever it may be, but support staff, it's anyone that's coming into the company, may it be in sales or accounting or admin or tech, whatever, they should put them into the support room with the other people for
Yeah.
a week or so as
Yeah.
part of their, starter program.
Indoctrination. Yeah. We used to do that. Yeah.
And by listening in and observing, they get a better feel of the people that they're dealing with. And
Yeah.
then when they go into their role, whatever that may be, it actually then can create passion,
Yeah.
and it can create compassion and give them clarity as well in how the organization runs on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know people who worked in my teams in customer services in the bank, who then moved into complaint handling teams. And when they read the customer's complaint, they knew exactly where the process had fallen down because they had worked in it and they understood it.
They understood it. Yeah.
And they would solve that, no problem. But look, it's more than a widget. A customer is more than a widget, right? And the pressure and the stress on the person on the phone, on the person managing that person on the phone, who are constantly being asked to do more with less, okay, in a customer services area, leads to many, many problems mentally, where people worry about the future. They worry about their job insecurity. They're not even thinking of promotions. They just want to work for a decent company. Ethically, they're fighting in their own mind about, we never give a customer a refund and we know we're in the wrong, but the manager says you can't do it. So ethically, they're kind of going, oh, should I be working for this company or should I not? There's all these dichotomies about their self-identity, their awareness, and the empowerment that they can't do a good job because they're not allowed. They're not allowed to take responsibility. They're not allowed to think positively. They're not allowed to be innovative in their job. They're just told this is a standard process.
Micromanagement.
Absolutely, follow it. And if you don't follow it, somebody is going to get a bop on the head. Okay, now that's for the person. That affects managers as well. And as you know, if you read my book, The Bulletproof Banker, when I suffered mental exhaustion working 84 hours a week, that affects people in management as well.
Well, let's talk about the book. The Bulletproof Banker.
Yeah.
Why did you write it?
I wrote it, Joe, I wrote it to clear my own head and to write down, it's more than a memoir of a 40-year career, but it was cathartic. It was like counseling for me. It gave me clarity of thought. It allowed me to make sense of how I was in my life and how I changed and how I came out the end of a time where I felt I was bulletproof and then came out and realized that, yes, I am bulletproof, but in a much different way. But I wrote it to help people who, when they read this book, can identify themselves, where they're working long hours, they have a huge, heavy workload, they're worrying about the past and catastrophizing about the future, they struggle to set boundaries in their corporate life, they struggle to say no, they struggle basically to believe in themselves because they're not in the present moment, and their life is a mess.
The book, if anyone reads the book, they will relate to something in the chapter which is affecting them or has affected them in their own life. But what I like about it is that if someone say, is reading it, or there's stress, or there's this decision making, or challenges that they have. Not only is it sort of showing it from a different person's perspective, but you're also, as you go through it, you're really finding the solutions as well.
Absolutely. In writing it, I could see I obviously could see my own journey, but it gave me clarity for even my own continued coaching people who struggle with stress through bjkenomotivation.com. But yes, if you read this book, what I'm saying to people is you will identify certain aspects of yourself. And we all deserve to have hope for the future, and to hope that tomorrow will be better, Joe, when we're struggling in a time in our careers and our life in stress. And I try to get people to understand that you're not alone, right? And my historical learned behavior was that asking for help was the sign of ultimate failure as a man.
Well, then,
which is not true.
Here's the question then. If younger Brian had read the book, how would have his life been?
Well, first of all, it's going to sound weird. I wouldn't be the man I am today, sitting here talking to you, if I hadn't gone through all the stuff that I've gone through that I outline in the book. Okay? But if I was a younger person reading this book now, you will get a realization around we never perceive ourselves the way others see us. Right? We could be smashing it and still in our head think that we're a failure. We could walk into a room and everybody else in the room was looking at you going, there's Brian. Jesus, I wish I could do my job as well as him. But in my head, I would feel, what am I doing in this room? I'm not good enough to be here because of imposter syndrome. So identifying those thoughts, the way we speak to ourselves, because we say things to ourselves that we would never say openly to another human being. It's amazing. So identifying that and working on that. And we talked about values and integrity in the past, but understanding what our own values are and living those values would have made me make slightly different choices. Now, I made good choices and bad choices, Joe, in my career, and your podcast, Getting It Wrong to Get It Right, is really apt for this conversation, because when I look back and you read the book, you'll go, what was he thinking sometimes, right?
But okay, here's something that's popping up. We all kind of go, in our heads, we may be doing a great job, but in our heads, we're doubting ourselves, right? But what about the person that thinks they're doing a great job and they believe that they think they're doing a great job?
Yeah.
But they're not.
Right.
How?
They're the difficult conversations that you have as a leader, using all your emotional intelligence and compassion when you sit down and talk to those people with examples of why they are not doing a great job. Okay? And asking the person, why do they think they're doing a great job? And how can we make sure that you can do a great job in the future in the way in which we want you to do a great job, right? So that self-awareness, the lack of self-awareness for the person who thinks they're smashing it, but they're not. And they're causing, it's like the bad driver on the M50 that thinks they're a great driver and there's carnage behind them because they're driving at, 30 miles an hour or something on the 120. Yeah. So it's self-awareness is really important in life. And how do we get our self-awareness? It's speaking to people, having some trusted people around you that you can ask questions, having people who
Yeah.
will tell you that you're not doing great or you
There's
are doing great.
there's a great thing in Toastmasters where when you're evaluating a speaker, that first, critiquing. So if you have someone who needs to be critiqued, so you can use this model as a leader, as a manager within your organization, is to first compliment them about everything that they're doing. And then after you've complimented with all the work, it's then slowly bringing in a critique that maybe that if they do something slightly different,
Mm,
will get a better result. And then
mm,
wrapping up with
mm.
an overall. But I think, if you go and say, look, you're doing great, but you need to do this. That's, you're doing great. You've done this work. I'm really proud of what you're doing here. So you have to paint it up and then critique them into something that slightly needs to be
Yeah.
changed as well.
See, we used to call that I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this word, but we used to call that the shit sandwich in the corporate world, okay? Where, you bring somebody in to do a review of their work and somebody would Joe, you're doing great. It's fantastic. I loved it, blah, 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 blah. And oh, by the way,
But
that call that you had with Brian was, Jesus Christ, what were you thinking when you said this? And we've had 4 complaints into the chief executive office and, might have to write you up on that. And but
yeah,
you know
but
what?
that's the
Other
wrong
than that,
way.
your
Yeah.
statistics is fantastic in the grand scale. People only come out of those meetings hearing the negative. The
Yeah, but
conversation.
if that conversation was, look, you're doing a great job on this, but occasionally, we've been reviewing stuff, and
Yeah.
we're learning that if we get these sort of calls in, we approach them slightly different, and overall, we're learning. And it's the language and the communication that's being spoken.
But if you just brought that person into a room in a decent environment, right, and they trusted you as a leader, and they
Yeah,
respected you as a leader, right, and they knew that you were going to give them some honest feedback, and you said, Joe, listen, I just wanted to take a second. There was a call with Brian yesterday, and I overheard you saying X, Y, and Z. Again, you're back to examples. It's not hearsay. It's not Johnny told me whatever. It's something. It has to be. If you're going to have this conversation, it has to be something that you have witnessed, that you have that you can relate to. How did you think it went? Listen to what the person said. Okay. Do you think that there's anything that you could have done better? Listen to what the person says. Okay. Okay. Let's talk that through. Is that the way we want this done? Do you think you could have said anything different? 99 times out of 100, the person that you're talking to is going to tell you that they know what they did wrong. And they can walk out that door happy that they had some coaching, not a hammering. They haven't been beaten over the head, right? And they can ask questions. So it's not, you're great, you're crap. Well, you're still great, right? Because that's just
yeah. No, you don't. I don't think.
mixed messages.
I think you said what the there is. It's giving them feedback.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's, for us all to get better, we do need feedback.
Mm.
We need to be critiqued. So as we get older,
Yeah.
we get better.
Yeah. But Joe, bring the person into a room to talk to them, to be able to critique them. The invitation to have a chat will tell the person in a way, listen, you had this call. I just wanted to walk through something with you. It's no kind of, you're not getting fired. The person's not sleeping the night before or wherever it might be, right? It's the way in which you structure that. Go in, have an open, honest conversation, listening to what the person says, and everybody goes away happy.
Yeah, it's the one thing as well. I know people say that, oh my God, I got an email from my boss on a Sunday night that they want to have a chat with me on Monday morning.
Absolutely.
That's terrible.
Mm.
Or I got an email and they want to have a meeting next week with no
context.
Yeah.
And you're left hanging.
And people, they say to me, oh, I'm left hanging, and going, look,
So you're back to what I said earlier around the ethical, the compassion, the emotional intelligence of the leaders. That part of the training, that if it's even mentioned, is the smallest part of a management training course because they don't want the managers to be seen to be sympathetic, not empathetic. They're afraid they're going to be so sympathetic that the people won't do the job. Oh, it's okay if I don't go into work tomorrow because Brian will understand that I'm sick. You know, no, you can still be a leader and still make the hard decisions and still be a very nice person and still be respected.
What are we lacking? That's the question. As organizations who have call centers or customer service centers,
Yeah.
what are they lacking?
Who are we here for? Ask, go into a boardroom and sit around a table and talk to all the suits, male and female, and ask them, why is your company here? Not just about the shareholder return.
Yeah, it's
Because if
about
it is, hey, you can sell all you want to and whatever. But why, genuinely, why are you here? And give them a scenario and ask them how. When was the last time they went down and listened to a phone call?
I remember hearing many, many years ago that sort of question was presented. And the question, we're here to help someone else have a better life.
Right. Right. That's that. Yeah.
To
I'll
make their
give
life
some.
easier.
You know, there's so many different ways that you can look at that, Joe. From the negative, are you making somebody else richer so their life can be
Yeah, but
better?
your
Okay. Okay.
customer. So
But
it's yeah.
absolutely, your customer, you're solving the problem for the customer. You're solving a broadband problem for a customer who's working from home or trying to build a business from home, and the broadband is crap. At least tell them why, and organize somebody to come out and fix it quickly. Okay, or you're giving the person in the call center who's taking those calls the empowerment to make the decision. And you know what? If they make the wrong decision, you're gonna go with it as a manager. Excuse me, you're gonna support the person because you empower them to make that decision. And at sometimes people will make the wrong decision. But you're also giving the person who works in the organization some kind of optimistic outcome or outlook for the future for them and their family in the company that they work for and the way the company is. Whether, look, we don't know what the future looks like, but you can't work in an organization where you think it might close tomorrow. The stress of that is just immense on people.
Yeah.
And
The
that
element, it's the uncertainty.
the uncertainty. So the uncertainty of job security, working long hours, heavy workloads, okay, working for people who don't listen, lack compassion, the industry losing its values, decision making being slow at a senior level, and you're wondering why, takes its toll on everybody in an organization at every level. Sometimes people don't realize the stress that a manager can be under because the manager isn't treating the people right, okay? And the manager doesn't understand the stress that the people are under because he or she is under
Yeah,
so
he's
much pressure
taking it
trying
out.
to
Yeah.
trying to manage what they're trying to manage. So, but what I'll tell people, Joe, and I can say this from experience, that stress builds and builds and builds and builds and builds until one day you will have a crisis like I did, suffer mental exhaustion, and lucky that I am that I came through that as a better person and a better leader. Okay. I am now trying to get the message across that you do not please wait to have a crisis. to manage the stress in your life. And by reading my book and the story and the advice that I give, if you can identify yourself, then you can stop. Do I say yourself making the mistakes I made? Kind of yes. Put that in a positive sense. Mistakes, I don't know if it's the right word, because I was trying to do everything that I felt was right for me and my family. But ultimately, I was so worried about what had gone on in my past, and I was so busy catastrophizing in my head about the future that I wasn't even present in the present.
Do you think your spiritual faith got you through a lot of that? Especially when the stress got on top of you and you popped.
Yeah.
Do you think your spiritual connection helped you through that as well?
I do. And Jesus, probably a conversation for another time. And, I have always had a good faith. And, I believe in Jesus and I believe in God, and I believe they had a hand in me coming back from my mental exhaustion, where genuinely the doctor had told me that my brain was completely fried from the pressure that I was working under. And I had the support of my wife and my family. And when I decided to do motivational speaking, when I came out the other end of this, which was amazing, we talk about faith. I remember sitting down one day and saying, how do I feel about speaking to large groups of people? Okay. And I'm used to talking in front of, managing 300 people and whatever, and speaking in front of them. That was never an issue in my corporate career. But I'm kind of going, what would I be like now, trying to motivate people and stand in front of people, companies and 100 people? And I got a phone call out of the blue from a local church liturgy team who said they heard me talking a couple of eulogies of really nice people that I'd known throughout my life. And I spoke at their funeral. And they said, we would love you to come and read the word of God to the congregation. And suddenly, overnight, I'm standing in front of a church with 100 or 200 people in it, reading out the word of God. And I'm kind of going, this is really spooky. Okay. I'm looking for an opportunity, experience to stand in front of people regularly. And this call comes out of the blue. And I've now been doing that for over 14 years. Okay. And I got 16 tattooed. You can't see it as you're talking here, but 16 tattooed on my bicep. And it's funny, you go on holidays and, my wife laughs. Somebody might come up and go, "Are you a Roy Keane fan?" when they find out I'm Irish, okay? It's because I've got the number 16 tattooed on my bicep, okay? And I go, no, I'm a Leeds supporter for my sins. And, it's the 16 because Roy wore 16. And I go, actually, it's a reference to Psalm 16, where I put my life in the hands of God and God will deliver me and everything will be good for me and my family. And that's just the spiritual part of me. I don't bang on about it, but it is important to me.
Yeah, it's, for me, it's getting stronger all the time. As I think as we get older and get closer to the door, we possibly we probably comes a little bit. There's no 80 is on the sinking ship, as they say.
Well, Joe, can I just say one thing, just on the thing of spirituality and stuff, and that is that, when I did my book launch there recently, I opened my book launch with a prayer, and I thought very long and hard about whether or not I would actually say to the people in the room. So I've got about, I didn't know it when I was writing it that I would have maybe 60 people in the room in front of me, and I didn't know whether asking to start with a prayer would offend anybody and whatever because of the way the world is. But I decided to hell with it. I'm going to open with a prayer. And one of the things that I said, and I asked us all to realize that nobody is so broken that God can't fix us. You know, and and we always get an answer to our prayers. And you read the book, you'll understand what I was going through and how I used to go to the church, and I'd be praying to God for answers, and I felt that I had been abandoned in my lowest ebb, and in fact I wasn't, right? Because what I learned was that God always answers our prayers, but to His timetable, not ours. Okay, and what we need to do is pray for the grace that our ears will open to hear the answers to those prayers when they come.
Yeah, I think we walk through the valley of death. And I think, if you look at it and it's within our mind, everything is, within our mind. And I think grace is very powerful. But I think you have to sort of, throw it out there and let go. Really.
Yeah.
Deeply.
And
yeah.
and I firmly believe that doors were opened for me, and doors were closed for me.
Here's something. I know we're coming to the end, but here's something. It was said to me that life isn't. Who said life was meant to be easy? It's not. It's It's only to have experiences, and those experiences can be good or bad, but that's what it is, and you have to see and experience it to actually then go, okay, I need to change. I need to change the direction on it. Tell me, what did you get wrong to get right?
What did I get wrong to get right? I don't. Do you realize how deep that question is when you ask that question on your podcast? Honestly, it's an emotional question, Joe, because genuinely I've come through such an amazing journey that I'm blessed. I'm blessed that I still have a loving wife who stood with me through this challenge of mental exhaustion and was there for me. Where I realized, as I said to you earlier, that when you say, what did I do wrong? Catastrophizing about the future and worrying about the past and constantly worrying about what people thought of me and my learned behaviors and my learned behaviors and the mixture of my fixed and growth mindset, if I put it that way, as I grew up and went into my corporate career. I got so many things wrong in believing that or understanding what I thought success was, what I thought my family needed. Okay. Houses, car, career, title. Is that what my family needed? No. They needed a husband and a dad, a son, a decent human being, a compassionate leader. And I got a lot of that wrong because I left my wife doing everything in the present with my kids, everything. She had her own career. She did everything. And there were times where, something would be on in the school play or whatever. And, my first reaction would be, I can't go because I've got to get this report done, or I've got to get this work done, and I'm going to be in the office till 10 o'clock tonight or something. But I'd have an argument, and then I would go. And I don't mean reluctantly go is not, you see, this is where it makes it difficult. Reluctantly go is not the right thing. I desperately wanted to be there at that play for, my son and my daughter or whatever, but I got there, but was I present? Physically, I would be in the room looking at the play, and mentally, I would be thinking about, I should be in the office at 10 o'clock because, tomorrow I'm going to be under savage pressure because I haven't got this done. And those are the things that I got wrong. But in the end, everything has been all right, if that makes sense. But I had to have a catastrophic incident of suffering mental exhaustion and a realization of what was important to me to finally understand what success looked like. And dare I say, to finally realize that I don't care what people thought of me. That was their opinion and they were entitled to it. And I was no longer going to let that eat away at me. But it was it was a long journey, and you read it in the book. There's a couple of, incidences 5 years after, 5 years after my recovery, and I was back to being Brian, and I hit the finish line in an ultra marathon, and I'm not going to tell you what came out of me. You can read the book and see it. But
here's a word that's popping up in my head. Do we do these things, miss when we're in the corporate world? I'm very blessed now, self-employed, so I don't have to answer to that corporate enslavement.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you are in that corporate enslavement, did we do these things because we felt that we wanted to be respected?
I did things. Gosh, look, I wasn't a bad man. I wasn't a psychopathic leader, right? But I did what I was told to deliver objectives that I was provided to deliver. And I would take those objectives, and on top of those objectives, I would put my own, what I needed to deliver in my head, which was another 50-60% on top of that, right? Perfectionism. Okay. And if I demanded that perfectionism from myself, I expected it from the people who I was leading, which was completely, really irrational, if you think about it. Okay. So then I would catastrophize about if I didn't deliver on time, and most of the time I did. But what would happen if I didn't? And that's the wrong, if you talk about getting it wrong, but that's in our head. And to get outside our head, to be more self-aware, to understand the belief system that has been given to us by our early educators and our parents. Okay. And that's why I would say, anybody listening to this now, being a parent actually is the same as being a leader in the corporate world, by the way, right? And how you treat your children and what you say to your children. And I don't mean give them everything that you want. I don't mean saying you're great when actually you're not. Okay. Disappointment is okay when you're young. Teaching that can help people when they become older. Because in my learning and in my head, showing vulnerability in the mad stress that I was under, to me, was a sign of failure. And I was never, ever, ever going to go down that path, because that I couldn't allow that. And that wasn't my ego speaking. That was my learning, right? So that made me do things wrong. And then I learned through my counseling and openly sitting down and speaking to my dearest love of my life, Martina, you know, how my madness was affecting her and my children. And that realization and self-awareness is so important to having the life that you want to live, the life that you were trying to have, that you aspired to, that you were in your head dying for.
Yeah.
But you know what, Joe? I had it already. I had it already.
Couldn't see the wood from the trees.
And I could not. Listen, I had the houses, I had the car, I had the wife, I had the children, I had the job, and I was still in my head chasing a corporate thing, success. And I actually had everything that I needed in life.
Yeah, and that's it. You know, it's what do you need and what do you want? I would have to say, looking at my own life, and I say this to people, I'm content. And like you, my journey took me on a roller coaster as well, around the world, cars, billionaires, boy club, partying, and looking now, living in a rural part of Ireland, kids in school, wife working at home as well. Forest walks appeal to me more than a nightclub or a concert. Content. Yeah.
And people still don't get when you say content, because I think they understand it differently to how you just explained that, right? Because what you've just explained is what life is all about. Absolutely 100% is what life is all about. And what do you have to do to go through to realize that? Well, please God, don't go through what I did. Because I am blessed that I came out the other end.
Search, what is it? Chasing the Dragon or something,
Yeah, well, look at this. There was two quotes that I put in my book, and they resonated with me during my recovery, right? And one was from Tom Hiddleston, the actor, and I'm sure somebody else said it, but then he said it, and it's become a quote from him. And he goes, "We all have two lives. The second one starts when we realize that we only have one." And that struck me during, my very dark period. And then, I made a very, very good friend. You can read about him in the book, called Marcus. Okay. And he said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me, because it was all the quality of my thoughts and my quest in my head, telling myself I was useless and believing that I had to do whatever I had to do to be successful, which made me very unhappy in myself and constantly in turmoil. I mean, I don't know whether people can realize that it's, it is possible to actually show outwardly to the world a very happy, content, and successful person, and be dying and completely in turmoil inside.
Yeah, there's many people. There's many people that like that. That's
and that's why I say I'm lucky to come out the other side, right, with my loving wife and kids. And I'm just through this asking people that if you're struggling, it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
You know, especially now in any aspect of your world. But if we talk about the corporate world, if you're working for a red leader, a blue leader, a corporate psychopath, there's more to life. You can have the future that you deserve if you can slow down in the present and work on your self-awareness and really understand what you want.
I'm a true believer. If you work, the best value that you can give yourself in life is working on yourself. And that is awareness. The more that you fulfill your mind with good stuff and tools to help you, the better your life will be.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know we're just coming to the end. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I genuinely, absolutely appreciate having your friendship in my life. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll openly going to say I could not have written this book without the help of Joe. I was sitting there writing this and I was missing deadlines to beat the band, and I needed somebody to put my feet to the fire, to make me accountable, to get my head set around, my ultramarathon and a marathon headset where, you have to do certain things in training to meet those demands. And Joe, you set me straight in writing this book. You gave me some inspiration and confidence and put my feet to the fire to deliver. And genuinely, I couldn't have done this without you. And now you have me on your podcast, and I genuinely appreciate that. And I want to put on record that, I genuinely appreciate your support and your friendship. And I think you're a marvelous human being. And I don't want you to cut this out of the podcast, because I think you do so much for people. Long may you continue.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Where can people get the book, Brian?
Yeah, you can get the book on Amazon, Joe. And if you're in Ireland, go to amazon.de, because amazon.co.uk cannot deliver to Ireland because of Brexit. And whatever country you're in, you can go into your own Amazon whatever, and it's available there too.
Yeah, it's a bit mad, that, isn't it? But you can order books as a writer off .co.uk.
Yeah, they can contact me. Yes, I have to go to DE to get my books as well, believe it or not. And it's just an anomaly that Amazon have.
No, I get my book from .co.uk.
Okay, well, I must try when I'm looking to get more books. But look, you can get that, and then if I can plug myself for a second, that if you're looking for a corporate speaker to go in and talk about, stress and leadership and management, then, you can get me through bjkenomotivation.com. And
get you on LinkedIn as well.
You can get me on LinkedIn, under Brian Kennedy, APA. Yeah.
Brian, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thanks for staying to the end. Every guest on this show has one thing in common. They got something wrong before they got it right. That's the whole thesis of getting it wrong to get it right. If that's landed with you, do two things. Subscribe wherever you're listening. New episodes drop every week.